Hello, and welcome to the Outcry Theatre Podcast. I'm Becca Johnson-Spinos, and I'm the Artistic Director of Outcry Theatre. Every episode of this podcast delves into the artistic process of creating theatre. I'm here with some of the stars of Tuck Everlasting. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Ashlyn Koford, and I play Winnie Foster.
I'm Alexis Stratton, and I'm playing Winnie Foster.
Hi, my name's Corbin Ross, and I'm playing Jesse Tuck.
My name is Brayden Soffa, and I'm also playing Jesse Tuck.
Thank you for being here, guys. We are actually recording this podcast via Zoom, so it's a very strange way to be recording this right now, not in the same room. Talk to me a little bit about the show. What's it about?
So Tuck Everlasting is this story about Winnie Foster. So she starts off as this, girl who's trapped inside her house, and she goes out on this adventure. And through this adventure, she meets the Tucks, who, I don't know if this counts as a spoiler, but the Tucks are immortal. They drink this water from the spring that makes it so they live forever. And it's her journey of her going out into this adventure and just figuring out how you need to learn how to let go and move on, and how in the end, moving on is better than preserving one moment forever, however perfect it might be, because it'll end up becoming tarnished and you won't get to fully live through everything that you can.
The story of Tuck Everlasting has the Winnie story, but there's also the storyline of the man in the yellow suit, which is kind of our antagonist in the show. And his sole purpose is that he's heard about this family who can live immortal, and he wants to find out the secret to how that came to be, and wants to use it for what most antagonists do, for greed and power and whatever it may be. So the whole show, we have these two different plot lines of, is he going to get the water that the Tucks have that made them immortal, or is Winnie going to make this decision of, is she going to live forever or not?
Who is your character, and sort of how do they fit into the story?
Winnie is a super spunky, fun, adventurous, just amazing girl. It's been so fun to play her because I feel that me personally, as a person, I am more of the good girl Winnie Foster in terms of I want to follow the rules. I listen to my mother. I'm okay, very confined. But it's been fun to play this side of her that is mischievous and wants to go on these crazy adventures and not be perfect all the time, and kind of break out. And she's learning about the meaning of life at such a young age, so her processing all of that is a lot to take in, but she learns so much and really grows as a person by the end of it.
The line to sum Winnie up is, but I've got a really bad case of being good, and that's Winnie. She has such a desire and an eagerness to see what's beyond the gates of her house, because she's never left, and she's had such a terrible incident happen in her life, and basically throughout her whole journey, she is worried about forgetting what happened to her, and forgetting the Tucks, and just forgetting. And through meeting and learning about these different characters' pasts and their emotions, and just learning about the world around her and life, she gains, I think, what she's always wanted to see.
Jesse he's the first person that Winnie meets on her little adventure outside of her house. He's one of the Tucks, so he is immortal, and he is frozen at 17, which coincidentally is how old I am. But so he's frozen at his age of 17, and he has this very mischievous, playful spirit. And he's really, by far, has the most of all the Tucks that enjoys living forever. on the surface at least, and enjoys all the things he gets to explore. And so he's sort of that first person she meets who she's like, this is what adventure is, and he's so adventurous. And throughout it, we kind of learn a little bit of how lonely he really is, and how even though he fills his life with all this adventurous stuff, he's still really lonely and sad.
He doesn't like the downside of life. He doesn't like being down, but he's just so deep in the sense of why he doesn't like being down is because he's always down. I feel his being happy and his being adventurous and like, oh, I've got to show you this entire thing is because he's sick of being alone. When he meets Winnie, his entire life flips upside down in the sense of he sees he's not alone anymore.
I want you guys to talk to me about what you felt like when you got cast in these roles, what that moment was like when you got the cast list.
I was on the Harvard campus in the middle of a pizza shop, and the email popped up sitting with my family, and I checked the email, and I just had to like stop myself from just like embarrassing myself in the middle of this public place. I mean, I was, really excited, and I couldn't wait to get back to Texas and get the show on the road and get all this started.
Well, for me, I have a similar story in the sense of I was in a public place. I was actually at church, doing the whole thing. And as we were starting to quiet down, the entire church was starting to quiet down. I get the email and I check it and I see it. And I scream. I just scream very loud, like, yes, I got it. And my mom was so embarrassed that we had to leave.
I was home on FaceTime with my friend when the email popped up, and then I got my mom on the phone through him, and she started crying because for me, this role is just very different for me. And, it's the lead of the show, and it's crazy and such a beautiful story. So I was just so thrilled and overwhelmed with joy.
Winnie Foster has been somebody I have wanted to play for the longest time. I was actually not in a public place when I got the cast list. I was in my room, and the email popped up, and I'm pretty sure I fell on the ground and was just in this state of like pure bliss. And I was looking around because no one was around me. I couldn't yell or hug anybody. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was so surreal and amazing.
Okay, now talk to me about how you felt a few days after the cast list came out, when the world started falling apart, literally at the seams.
Based off of, I was in Boston again. By that point, I was in New York when everything really started falling apart. So I was in the middle of, the biggest urban area in the U.S., which at that point was definitely the like hot spot of everything. So for me, I was a little concerned. I had been riding the subways. I was concerned for myself at first, but then schools started closing, rehearsals got canceled, and it was just this big sort of like realization that this like wasn't going to happen as I thought it was going to happen. I went from I can't wait to go to rehearsal and see all these people and get to, share all the excitement I had with everyone, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's not going to happen. It was, it was kind of disappointing. And especially at first, because we were stuck in this sort of like limbo. There was no one knew if this was going to last for 2 weeks or 2 months or even longer. And so it was really, it was mostly disappointing and just sort of, it was a little gloomy.
That day that we realized that everything was like shutting down and everything, I had to sit down with my mom, and I was just like, this show is just not going to happen. I really thought that it was just game over because the entire country was shutting down. And I thought like the only time I get to play this wonderful role, this dream role, it just slips from my hands as soon as I get it. Definitely that first couple of days were probably the hardest of this entire process.
The state that I was in when I got the cast list was like at a 100. And I think from before I just like lost all hope, I was just like, this is really upsetting. But like, it'll only be a few weeks. I mean, it won't. We'll do this for a little bit. We'll do the we'll do the online thing, it'll be okay, and then we'll go right back to it, and we'll pick up right back where we left off. But we ended up blocking the entire show over Zoom, which was unlike any other experience I have ever had, and unlike any experience any of us has ever had. But I think as the rehearsal process online got longer and everyone kind of knew that we were going to be in this situation that we were in for a longer time, that's when it got more upsetting for me, and that's when the doubt kept creeping in.
People keep asking me, like, why didn't you just cancel the show? And I've had a lot of people ask me that recently, because people have just sort of started to be like processing, I think, like all the stuff that we've been going through. And it never occurred to me to cancel the show, because I think I was in the same headspace as Alexa, which was just like, I'm frustrated by the like current situation, but why would I give up when there's still so much hope that we're going to be able to do this show? And we're still so early on in this, and we don't know how long this is going to go on. And it seemed early on like, you know, it was going to be like 6 to 8 weeks that we were going to be dealing with this. And so that to me was like no big deal. As Alexa said, we blocked the entire show on Zoom, which includes all of the dance numbers that were taught on Zoom and all of the blocking of every moment, basically, of the entire show.
I mean, for me, Zoom was like this really big transition that I just like couldn't have really fathomed before it actually happened. Like, if you had told me before it all happened that we'd just have rehearsals on Zoom, I like wouldn't really be able to tell you how that would work at all. In normal rehearsal, you're there, you tell us the blocking and choreography, we do it, we get notes, we just keep going. But on Zoom, it's a lot where, well, you know, first it's a little harder to communicate with each other, because it's like you have to hear it through the speaker, there's the delay, and it's harder to learn to because you only have that limited, you know, sort of view. And then another big problem was, at first was figuring out how to like film what we had done. That definitely took us a while and a lot of work, I know, from you, Miss Becca, to get all that done for everyone and make sure that we had videos that really helped us explain everything. You know, especially because one big thing is like when you're doing it in the space, you kind of have this like spatial memory of it when you come back to do it again. But when you're doing it in your own space and then you're transferring it to the rehearsal space and transferring it again to the performance space, you don't have that like spatial memory. And so it's a lot more work to remember it, especially in that other space, because you're just like somewhere else, a place with different dimensions, a place with like that just looks different. So it's definitely a lot more work than normal.
For me, it was definitely like a day-to-day basis. When we blocked the scene right before Top of the World, I feel like it was just, we can easily do this. This was a great day. I'm acting it out. I know exactly what she's talking about. It was just a wonderful thing. But then when we went to start the partner in crime, I was just struggling. I was like, how are we going to do this for the entire blocking point? I am struggling. I can't figure out what she's trying to say about the dancing. And another thing about watching it on camera is when we were learning Top of the World, I couldn't tell if it was like reversed in the sense of I was supposed to be doing the opposite of you or if I was supposed to be doing the same. So the tree's on stage left, but I was on stage right dancing. So I was on the wrong side of the stage doing everything backwards. It took a toll in the sense of when I go for off book and I go to show you like, look, I've done the work and everything. I'm still trying to figure out step by step instead of when we do it all together from the very beginning. We already went through that process. So now we're going to put it all together and work on the emotional part. But it was definitely the best option that we had in that it was either that or no show at all. And so I'm very happy with how it turned out personally.
One thing that I found difficult was the connections with other people. Usually during our process, you know, when you're learning your lines and she's giving you notes and blocking, we get to look at people, kind of understand how they view their character. You know, you get to look at them in the eyes and create a connection with them. So it was really hard not having a Jessie to react to. Or for Winnie, we have so many scenes where we are being sung to. So it was just me and Alexa sitting in our room looking at no one, but having to react to these amazing stories that they're telling through song.
I mean, I think technology is truly amazing these days for us being able to essentially put an entire show together with doing it online. I mean, that is incredible, and the fact that we have a show today is because of that. I mean, rehearsals were definitely more like tedious, and it required a lot of energy and time, especially from Miss Becca for staying late and, you know, recording videos and making it easier for everyone to learn things for when we did come back. I mean, it just seemed more magical, I guess, when we came back into rehearsals and we could actually see these people telling their stories and singing to us, and we were dancing with everybody, and people were dancing behind us, and it just felt like this overwhelming, like, amazing thing that we were doing, and it felt more powerful and emotional. And it was just, I mean, even though we had to go through that situation on Zoom and feel, I mean, pretty lonely just in your room, and then go to rehearsals where we could all be together was, I mean, it really, really awesome and impactful.
It was really hard to do music rehearsals over Zoom because of how Zoom works and the delay and everything. So I've been really proud of how we've just been learning our music since we've gone back to in-person, which was not really that many weeks ago. And since then, we've started really learning the music and having music rehearsals. And everyone has just come so far since we started music rehearsals in this short amount of time. And everyone's really putting a lot of extra effort and making sure we have our music down really good, which has been really impressive to me.
I do want to talk about the process from my perspective because it was so hard for me. I always imagine it in my head before I come into rehearsal, obviously, because that's like what my job is. But then I literally had to put all these imaginary people in the space in my head with nobody else there. So, you know, blocking a scene, I'd be running around and being like, okay, Jessie, you're downstage right, like here, and then Winnie's over here, and then when you cross here. And then, you know, during all the dance formations, I had to be like, there's a triangle downstage left, and this is what this is. And I had to like run all over the space, kind of trying to fill everyone in with where they were supposed to be. And I had all these people on Zoom who were completely bored and uninterested and like not giving me much energy and passion. And I was like, what am I even doing here? Like, why am I bothering to do all this work? No one cares, especially because we were staying at the rehearsal space, me and my stage manager, Danielle, Soffa, and sometimes Mr. J. We're staying at the rehearsal space till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning after every single rehearsal, because we did, as the kids said, I videotaped myself doing every single bit of choreography that any actor had for this entire show. So it was just like the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And it did feel, as Alexa said, really lonely. It felt like a really lonely process because normally, you know, when I'm here with the kids, there's all this like energy and passion, and you know, you can tell that everyone really wants to be there. And it's kind of like the hard work and the commitment and the dedication is kind of like part of our company ethos. And when everybody's together in the room, you like really feel that, and you're like, yeah, okay, I vibe with this. This is like, I get the vibe. I'm a part of the vibe, right? And you just can't get that over Zoom. I am sort of glad that we made it all the way through the show, though, because I feel like saying we did it all on Zoom is like an accomplishment that I feel like is a cool thing. Next thing, I want you guys to talk about like how it felt like to come back to rehearsals in person and what that process has been like. I'll start by saying that we've been wearing masks to every single rehearsal. Obviously, we've been doing temperature checks, keeping everyone spread out at rehearsal as much as possible. And then we've also been doing a lot of rehearsals outdoors for larger groups. So a lot of like very different aspects to being in rehearsal. But what's that been like for you guys?
Being back at rehearsal for me has really made the show feel more real and more personal. I get to see Corbin doing all the same things I'm doing, take some things that he's doing, incorporate it myself, just learn from somebody else who's doing the same thing that I am. There is still some, we aren't touching each other and some other things, which are, they do make things a little more difficult, but it's a lot better because you get to just like, you get to look into the eyes of the people that you're talking to and that you're acting with and just feed off their energies.
In the beginning of all the Zoom rehearsals and everything, we were all so pumped and everything, but about, I don't know, 3/4 through blocking, we all just lost that energy and it just stopped feeling real to me. I was doing the work, I was showing up, I was doing everything that I could, but it just didn't feel like it was happening. And so when we went to real rehearsals and to see everyone, some of the new kids, I was like, oh, Dave, that's what you look like below the neck. I finally understood. It was really nice to meet all the new people, but other than like just meeting everyone and seeing them again, it started to just click and make sense. Just boom, there's magic happening everywhere.
Because Outcry is more small than other theater companies, we all do know each other pretty well for the most part. So coming back, even though there was like a connection issue throughout the rehearsal process, coming back, it did kind of feel like second nature to be like, oh yeah, these are the people that I've done a bunch of shows with. I know how this works. Even though it was a little intimidating to come back because, at that point, I feel like I hadn't really been acting for like a couple of months or singing. So that was a little difficult. But for the most part, it all just started to come back. It was so nice being with Alexa, and especially with her because she's done 2 little girl roles before in the past year, and I have never done any. So I really got help from her on how to physically portray someone a lot younger than me and make it still feel real and genuine. So it was just really nice to be back with everyone and have some normalcy in our lives again, even in the craziness of our world.
As tough and tedious as Zoom rehearsals sometimes felt, it made coming back feel like a million times more worth it than if we were stepping into a regular rehearsal process for a regular show. I really think that because this has all happened, it's made all of us appreciate this way more and want to like persevere and make this show happen and work together. And though we've taken these hits, we just keep coming back, and we will keep coming back until this show happens because it's proven to mean so much to all of us and all of the magic that we talk about and everything that we believe in as a part of Outcry and as actors. It's really nice to make it all happen together, like Ashlyn said, with this group of people who made it happen over Zoom. So we're making it happen even better now.
So how do you guys feel now? We just took promo photos. We're doing a podcast. How are you guys feeling now about the whole thing? Like, what's the vibe?
Well, for me personally, it still doesn't really feel real that the show is happening. In my head, it's still, because it's just been, the show was cast in March, it's now August, the longest show process ever. It still kind of doesn't really feel like it's soon, but also, it's very soon, and I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to be on that stage and perform it. All this work we've been doing for all these months, everything we've gone through, it's finally going to pay off, which is really exciting.
When we went out to go take promos, I was like, oh, this is it. It's the thing, I finally got to, be Jesse, which I've been Jesse in the sense of the past couple of months, but this time I am in the costume. I am Jesse holding the water to Winnie, doing the whole thing. It finally is here, and we're going to get through this tech week and we're going to kill it. And it's going to be the best show ever.
A couple of weeks ago, me and Alexa finally got the amazing green iconic Winnie dress. And we both texted each other and we were like, oh my gosh, that was the most magical feeling putting it on. And so you're like, okay, I think we're doing this. I think this is real.
Part of me doesn't feel like it's like still real that it's happening, but I mean, I got the dress, I got my hair dyed red, we did the promo photos, like, I mean, it better be happening.
How do you think the themes of the show really fit in with all the stuff we're experiencing right now, going through a pandemic?
The show has some really good messages. Some of those being to really value every moment, which is something I really think is important right now because, a lot of us are spending a lot of times by ourselves or, inside our houses. And it's still important to, value all the moments you have, all the times you have with your family or friends, be that, social distance or, over the online.
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels to Tuck Everlasting in the world that we're living in right now. I mean, an obvious one is that Winnie, one of her lines is, getting out of the house happens, well, never. And for a couple months, that was all of our situation. Another thing is that the Tuck family has gone through a lot of sacrifices and, losing a lot of precious things to them. And obviously with COVID, unfortunately, there's been a lot of lost jobs or just, mental health and just, really hard things that everyone has to deal with. So even though there are sacrifices and hardships, it really does make us persevere more and come out the other end stronger. And for me personally, I've bonded so close with my family and friends as I feel the Tuck family does by the end of the show because of the situations that we've all gone through.
So much of Tuck Everlasting is about living your life to the fullest and learning how to do that and learn to accept the bad things that happen and the hardships and the epic, most highest parts of your life and the celebrations and everything that you go through and how that is just a part of life. And being in quarantine during this global pandemic, it's given everyone a lot of time to reflect on how they were living their lives. So I think it's a good opportunity being in the position that we are and we're in to think about how to cherish the world around us and to appreciate people who are in our lives and start living better and learning to love everyone and everything that you're given.
The show actually starts with this song called Live Like This. And we're introduced to pretty much all of the main characters with few exceptions. And every single one of them has the line, I can't live like this forever. And for the Tucks, of course, it's their frustration at the endless amount of time that they have stretching before them with the days repeating over and over and over again. And obviously that's an exaggerated expression of how we were all feeling, but the days blending together and particularly Angus Tuck is this man, he's the father of the Tuck family. He's sleeping his days away and really like not doing anything. And I think we all have those times where during this where we wanted to kind of give up and sort of curl up into a ball and just forget that this was happening. And I think so much of the story is about them finding happiness even when the circumstances that they have been given are not ideal, which is sort of what we've been forced to do through all of this. What's the most fun part of being Jesse and Winnie in Tuck Everlasting?
The most fun part about being Jesse is just getting to embrace his just playfulness and his energy and his just like, kind of his endless youthful joy.
But also the deepness that you get to play in the second act of the show. You get to play a very deep part of Jesse, where you find out how he truly lives. I would say, I wouldn't say he's always definitely like down and, in the dirt, but he's definitely not what he looks like. Not what you would expect very much for a 17-year-old, honestly.
One of my favorite things about being in Tuck and playing Winnie Foster is I get to do something so different than what I usually do. In other characters I've played, I think about physicality like every character, but not to the extent that I think about it with this character. We make Winnie like kind of pigeon-toed, and she like rolls on her feet and like, plays with the hem of her dress, and she's a child. So it's so fun to be semi like relaxed on stage and not doing like stand up straight, like do the perfect things that you're supposed to do in theater for the most part. So it's very fun to play a physical character and put myself in a mindset of an 11-year-old who processes things a lot differently than people our age. Also, another thing that I love about Tuck Everlasting is when we get to do numbers with the ensemble, because the ensemble is amazing, and watching them dance is like jaw-dropping to me and feels so alive and magical, and it's incredible to be on stage with them.
I love playing little girls because of, well, their physicality is just so much fun, and it's just freeing, and I mean, it feels like there's hardly any rules. But also, one thing I love about being little girls is how their minds are just so much different from like a teenage girl brain. She just has this wide-eyed type of energy about everything, and I just love that. I mean, she looks at Jesse one time and she falls in love with him, and it's just so fun to play all of her extremes. So spunky and so alive, but she's also so good, and she tries to be poised, but that's not really who she is. And I like all of those little complexities about her character.
So what's the hardest thing about playing these parts?
The hardest part about playing Jessie Tuck is really, it's a really big thing to try to be both a 17-year-old and 100+ years old at the same time, and taking all the experiences he's had and incorporating it while still keeping the same youth to him.
It's a lot harder than it looks. There's just so much you have to remember and so much you have to do. Brayden being my double is probably the best situation I could have been in. He's been so helpful and so understanding at times. Definitely also put me in my place when I did not know my things. So it's probably my favorite show process, but also my hardest show process. So I 100% recommend to anybody who wants to audition, come on down.
What I said is the most fun thing about Winnie Foster, which is her physicality, is also one of the hardest things for me, especially because by the time this show performs, I will actually be 17 years old. As I'm older, I just have different tendencies than an 11-year-old would. So it's like, how far do I push to make my voice sound younger? How far do I go with this physicality without making it feel goofy and cartoonish? So it's riding that fine line of still being young and playful like any 11-year-old child would be, but also making her feel real and authentic like any other character at Outcry.
I think our production, while retaining a lot of the kind of iconic elements from the original production, is very unique. Talk about what makes our production of the show a unique version of this story.
It's kind of a once in a lifetime kind of thing, in the sense of we're not really going to have another show where we start off like, oh, this is going to be the greatest show, and then go to the fact that we don't think that it's going to happen, that there's a big chance that we will have to cancel the show, and then to come out to the other side. We did it. We have so much more of a bond as a cast now because of everything that we've gone through. I can look at all these people and I can tell you like they are the most hardworking people, and they will do absolutely anything to make this show or any show happen. And I honestly think that this version of our show and the show that would happen without quarantine and everything, I feel like this could be better, could honestly just be a better show than if we didn't have what happened.
Because these characters are so magical and there's almost a whimsicalness to this show, we also do play a lot of the realness of these characters. And again, I feel like this is a strength that Outcry specifically has, where we do get to play those real moments, and they're vulnerable, or the really strong, big, out there moments. For example, in our production, Man in the Yellow Suit is like 10 times of what Broadway portrayed him as, which is completely fine. But he's just so bigger than life and so crazy and spastic and so scary. So you have characters like that, but then we also get to have the scene with like Jessie and Winnie that's very vulnerable and very real and heartfelt. So I think we play the highs and lows of this show extremely well.
Through this process, I think that we've all learned probably more by doing this show, even before the actual performances have happened, than we've learned doing lots of other productions. So what's your takeaway? What do you think you've learned from this whole thing?
I think I've really just learned like how much I can persevere and how adaptable I can really be. We've had a lot of challenges thrown at us, and there's been a lot of times where I've been like, I can't do this. And I've, been challenged over and over again and faced with things I didn't think I could do, and I've done them. And I've learned just how working hard can get you to where you need to be, no matter what the circumstances might be, no matter what unexpected challenges you might face.
One of Winnie's things that she deals with in the show is memory and, forgetting the things that are important to her. And I am such a person that is on okay, what's the next thing? Oh, I have to do this and this and this. And I just never really take a breather. That with this forced stop of quarantine, I just feel that I was able to really just embrace all the memories that I've had in my life, all the relationships I have with people, the closeness of my family and my friends, and cherish my memories more and the moments in my life that make it worth living, and just not take life for granted, because it is such a precious thing, as they talk about it in the show.
I mean, the whole show is about life and living it and making the most of it. And for me personally, that's about hard work and passion and doing what you love and persevering and never being satisfied in a good way. And that personally, I feel very thankful for this experience and for being with the people that I'm with, doing what I love, and knowing that I get to continue doing what I love. And me being able to make that my life is something that's really awesome.
Thank you guys so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of the Outcry Theatre Podcast. You can find out more about this production at outcrytheatre.com. That's theater with an R-E. This podcast has been produced by me, Becca Johnson-Spinos, and edited by Jason Johnson-Spinos. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your theater-loving friends.